All right, listeners, strap in. We're diving into some pretty heavy stuff today. You guys sent us excerpts from this academic paper, and wow, the title alone is a doozy. With Jews, you win.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be making a statement. And all this focus on the Middle East, too.
Right. Right off the bat, though, we got to be clear. This paper, it's one perspective. We're not here to endorse anything, just unpack it, see how the author's tying together power, ideology, all that.
Kind of like taking apart, I don't know, a really complicated puzzle, examining all the pieces.
Exactly. And they don't waste any time. Boom, the rise of Israel, that's how they start. Everything after October 7th, 2023 is their focus.
Seems like a turning point for them, that date.
Yeah.
They go into all these actions by Israel. Well, it's a lot.
No kidding. Annihilating Hamas, Hezbollah leadership taken out, people displaced in Gaza, then into Lebanon. Assad's regime in Syria falls, all painted as Israel flexing, you know?
And it's interesting, their tone. Like, they're almost impressed by how effective it was, but then there's this, I don't know, sadness, especially about Assad.
It's weird, right? Admiring it, but regretting it almost. They even say they're personally sad about Assad, even though they acknowledge, he wasn't perfect. And then there's that whole bit about Netanyahu and the Jewish Messiah.
Right, that footnote, the one pointing to a YouTube video, something about Netanyahu being the last prime minister before the Messiah comes. It's like the author suggesting that belief is driving him, adding another, I don't know, dimension to it all.
So, okay, we've got Israel on the world stage, maybe prophecy-driven. Where's the author take us next?
Well, then it's all about the immunity of Israel, which, I mean, that's a loaded phrase right there.
Definitely implies something, right? It's like they're saying Israel plays by different rules. They talk about the International Criminal Court, those warrants issued,
Yeah.
even for Netanyahu, but then nothing happened.
Totally. And they're not buying it. Not really. Like,
Right.
no real action from the West. What's the point? They even mentioned the U.S., the Hague Invasion Act, that thing where the U.S. could shield Israel from the ICC.
So hold on. Is this paper saying Israel's above international law? That's a huge claim.
They don't say it straight out, but the phrase they use is a state of perpetual exceptionality to describe Israel, I mean. Almost like they're in this unique position, normal rules don't apply.
It's fascinating. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, how do people deal with it? All this power, ideology, loyalty. How do individuals navigate that?
And that's where they bring in, get this, former Nazis joining the Communist Party in East Germany after World War II.
Wait, what? Nazis becoming communists? That's a hell of a switch.
Right. But their argument is, these guys, it was pragmatic, power shifted, they adapted, survival,
So even with completely opposite beliefs, self-preservation, maybe even saving their nation, that came first. Makes you think.
They tie this into that quote from The Spectator, the one about Thatcher and Enoch Powell, remember?
Fighting for values versus fighting for your country, right?
Yep. Powell's like, values are eternal, you can't fight for or destroy them.
Huh?
Thatcher's all about defending Western values, though. So the author's using this to show the struggle, principles versus doing what's best for your nation.
Okay, so former Nazis switching sides, Thatcher versus Powell. Where does this whole allegiance thing go from there?
Well, buckle up. They bring up Otto Skorzeny and Walter Rauff, former SS officers, working for Israel's Mossad.
You're kidding! The SS! The Nazis responsible for, well, everything. And they're working for Israel. How is that even possible?
It really is mind-blowing, right? I mean, SS membership was, criminalized after Nuremberg. And yet these guys not only escaped that, they're employed by the very state the Nazis targeted.
Makes you wonder about victor's justice, Winners decide who's good, who's bad. Sometimes maybe practicality wins out over what's right.
Yeah, and the author seems to be saying exactly that. They even bring up this guy, Karl-Heinz Schneider, former Hitler Youth, converts to Judaism, serves Israel.
So someone literally raised on Nazi beliefs ends up embracing the Jewish faith. Talk about a 180. What's the point there, do you think?
It's like the ultimate example, right? Aligning with power, even if it contradicts everything you supposedly believed before. Maybe it's that pragmatism again, adapt to survive, or maybe even thrive in this new system.
So not just surviving, but succeeding under this new power structure. It's pretty cynical, if you ask me.
It is, and this leads into their most, controversial point. They bring in this academic agent, is what they call them, claims the American ruling class. They're deeply invested in the well-being of Jews and Israel.
Whoa, now they're wading into some deep waters. What do they do with that claim? How does it fit into all this?
They argue that this influence, it allows for some wiggle room in U.S. policy, as long as, those Jewish and Zionist interests are safe. Like there's this unspoken rule, nobody touches that.
Like a third rail in American politics, touch it and you're done. And they even imply that being white, Christian, traditionalist, that's seen as a threat to Jewish identity, almost. That's a pretty tense situation they're describing.
It is. And it leads to their big conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get things done politically, you got to align with Jewish power, even if your goals, on the surface, seem to go against Jewish interests.
So basically, power trumps ideology, and Jewish power is the key in America. That's a bold statement, to say the least.
Totally. And it brings us back to that central question the author keeps coming back to. How do individuals, groups, how do they balance all this? Power, ideology, loyalty to their nation, it's complicated.
Yeah, we've got Assad sticking to his beliefs, losing everything. Skorzeny and Roth, they're all about pragmatism, new allegiances. And Enoch Powell, well, he'd probably say, put your nation first, even if it means embracing something you hate.
It's like they're all different sides of the same coin, different ways to deal with this. And the author, instead of giving us answers, says we should look at history, empires, specifically.
So after all this, shocking examples, controversial claims, now we got to go back in time. It's like they're saying the past holds the key to understanding the present or something.
Exactly. And that's where we're headed next. Eastern Rome, Russia, Persia, China. Time to see what they can teach us.
All right, history buffs, get ready for round 2.
Welcome back to this deep dive, folks. Last time, remember, we were looking at With Jews You Win, all those claims about Israel's power, that whole perpetual exceptionality thing.
Yeah, like how do people even operate in a situation like that? And then those examples, people switching sides throughout history, wild stuff.
Oh, totally. And it gets even crazier, I think, in this next section. Serving power, the author calls it.
This is where we get into the SS officers, right? Skorzeny and Roth ending up working for Israel's Mossad still blows my mind, former SS with Israel, with that history.
Messes with your head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, SS membership,
Yeah.
criminalized after Nuremberg. But these guys, not only do they escape that, they're working for the very state the Nazis well.
It's like the author's saying, forget good and bad, it's all about power. Wasn't that their term? Victor's justice?
Yeah. Like when the whole power structure flips, the winners write the rules. Sometimes maybe doing what's practical beats doing what's right, It's messed up, but these examples, you got to wonder.
And then there's that Karl-Heinz Schneider guy. Right. Hitler Youth converts to Judaism, serves in Israel. Talk about a complete 180.
You're kidding. From Nazi ideology to embracing the Jewish faith, it's wild.
So what's the message there? Just survival or something deeper?
Good question. Part of it's got to be that pragmatism we talked about, right?
Yeah.
World changes, you change with it, even your beliefs. But it also makes you think about power itself, how it shapes what people do.
Like not just surviving, but actually doing well under this new power.
Yeah, exactly. And this leads into their most, I don't know how to put it, their most explosive claim, I guess. The one from that academic agent.
You mean about the American ruling class being all in on Jews in Israel?
That's the one. And they don't hold back. They're saying this influence, it's how U.S. policy is shaped. Certain things you just don't touch.
Like that third rail idea, right? Touch it, your career's over. And they even imply, like, being white, Christian, traditional, that's seen as a threat to Jewish identity. That's a tense picture they're painting.
It is. And this is all building to their big conclusion. They're saying, if you want to succeed in U.S. politics, align yourself with Jewish power. Even if on the surface your goals seem to go against Jewish interests.
So power is everything, and Jewish power is the key in America. It's something else, that's for sure.
No argument there.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to what the author keeps asking, how do people balance all this?
Mm-hmm.
Power, their own beliefs, being loyal to their country. It's a mess.
It's like we've got Assad standing his ground, losing everything. Then Skorzeny and Roth are all about, hey, new power, let's join him. And Enoch Powell, he'd probably say, do what's best for your nation, even if you got to hold your nose doing it.
Like they're all different responses to the same problem, right? And the author, instead of giving us answers, says, look at history, empires, that's where you'll learn.
So after all that craziness, now we got to go back in time for answers. It's like history holds the key or something.
Yeah, that's the idea. And that's exactly where we're headed. Eastern Rome, Russia, Persia, China. Let's see what they can teach us.
All right, history buffs. Round 2 is coming up. Okay, so we're back, wrapping up this deep dive into With Jews You Win. We've gone from Israel's power, that victor's justice thing, all the way to former SS working for Israel. And now it's history time. Empires.
It's a weird turn, isn't it? After all that heavy stuff, modern examples, suddenly we're going way back.
Yeah, it's like the author saying, to understand power today, gotta look at the OG power players. They specifically say Eastern Rome, Russia, Persia, China. Those are the ones to study.
And those weren't just any empires. They lasted for centuries, some even longer. Huge impact.
So what's so special about them? Why bring them up now?
Well, they were tough. Internal problems, threats from outside, all kinds of chaos. And they survived. They adapted, changed, figured out how to keep that power going for a long, long time.
So what's the secret? How'd they do it?
And here's where it gets interesting. The author says these empires, they didn't get stuck on one ideology or even a fixed idea of what their nation was. They let those things change as they needed to stay stable, stay in power.
So not being stubborn, but being flexible, even compromising on some core beliefs.
Exactly. Look at Eastern Rome. They went from pagan to Christian, right? Tons of different cultures got absorbed into that empire. They even moved their capital, Rome, to Constantinople when it made strategic sense.
It's like they were always changing, but still held onto that power.
Yeah. It wasn't just them. Russia, man, how many times have they transformed? Tsars, communist revolution, now this. They've expanded, shrunk, different beliefs all over the place. But that sense of nationhood, that ambition, stayed strong.
So maybe the key to lasting power is being able to adapt? That's kind of backwards, isn't it? Like, today, everyone's all about sticking to their ideology no matter what.
Yeah, it is kind of weird to think about. The author's basically saying the most successful powers in history, they weren't the ones who dug their heels in. They were the ones who changed with the times.
Almost like change the rules if you want to stay in the game.
And that's the big question, right? If power is the constant and beliefs, even what a nation is, if those are more fluid, what does that mean for us going forward?
Yeah, are we going to be more practical, more adaptable, or are we going to stay stuck in these ideological fights?
Tough to say. But this paper, it definitely gives us a lot to think about. Look beyond the surface, question what we think we know. Maybe the way to hold on to power involves a lot more flexibility than we're used to.
Well, after this deep dive, all this power, beliefs, history lessons, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all this?
I think it's this. Things change constantly. Power shifts all the time.
Okay.
Being able to adapt, to evolve, that might be how you not just survive, but truly succeed in the long run. It's something to chew on for sure.
It is. And we want to hear what you all think. What stuck with you from this deep dive? What questions are still bugging you? Hit us up. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep on exploring.